Hi there, you're listening to a podcast that's created and sponsored by Second Avenue Baptist Church. If you enjoy what you hear today, check out our website and app by visiting secondavenuembc.org. You can find our mobile app and tons more content, podcasts, sermons, and more by searching for Second Avenue on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome to episode 10 of Decision Point. Today we're continuing in our three-part series covering the Prodigal Son parable. Today we'll be talking about the older son, and that parable is found again in Luke chapter 15. So as you're opening your Bible or your app there, let's go on with today's trivia. To whom was this parable directed? So to whom was Jesus teaching or talking to when he told this parable? Stick around to the end of the podcast for the answer. And now let's read the latter half of the Prodigal Son parable found in Luke chapter 15. We'll start today in verses 25 through 32. And I'll be reading from the English Standard Version today. Verse 25 says, "Now his older brother was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant." Verse 27, "So the servant said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him back safe and sound.' But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered the father, 'Look, these many years I have served you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' And the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found.'" Well, I do have to start this whole process off today by saying this party that's thrown, I understand where the older brother's coming from, because this party is no small undertaking. The older son complained, "You didn't even cook me a young goat." Well, I was privileged to be a part of two very large celebrations while I was in Mexico. For one of those, they killed two pigs and had a roast, and the other one, they killed a fatted calf or a cow. Now, this process takes many, many hours, and I would not go into details here. The animals were killed in both cases in the mid-morning, kind of early to mid-morningish, but everything wasn't quite ready until early evening. And this is very labor intensive to prepare a whole animal. The older brother must have been really busy not to notice this big undertaking. It would have taken multiple servants and people involved running to and fro. When he finds out that all this is happening, however, the older brother directs his anger at his father. Now, he was more than likely upset with his brother too, but he couldn't believe his father would honor such an unworthy son who had basically shunned their family and robbed them in the process. He was frivolously spending all of his inheritance. And I have a few thoughts here on the older brother as we get going. First, he was so caught up in the work that he was doing. Notice the celebration that was being prepared, or that was even occurring by the time he finally came around. And being directly involved with church ministry for over 2 decades, I have seen ministers who are more concerned about the everyday work that goes on in a pastoral job than, unfortunately, in the spiritual necessity of their own family or their congregation. And it's not just the pastors that are at fault in this. Unfortunately, it's many of the lay Christians as well, the congregants. It's true of so many Christians. We get wrapped up in our everyday life, and we miss out on blessings from God because we're too focused on other things. And I'm saying we in this case because I find myself in the same boat over and over again. We get so wrapped up in doing the service to which we're called that we miss the things that are going on around us. His older brother was serving his father, doing his job, that he was missing out on a celebration that his younger brother had been found. Second, he was angry for the wrong reason. As you read verses 28 through 31, he is mad that he had never been celebrated by his father. Now, this anger doesn't just root from that, it roots from other things as well. But he lays out his case that he had been faithful, obedient, and hardworking, but had never even gotten a small party. And what he failed to see were the blessings that he was surrounded with daily. Everything the father had belonged to him as the rightful heir. His father told him, "Look around. Everything I have is yours." But he didn't appreciate that. And as children of God, to put it into our perspective, how many blessings have we been given that we don't have gratitude for, that we don't appreciate, that we don't have a spirit of thankfulness to our God who's provided all these things around us? Sure. Maybe the Johnny come lately, the new kid in town comes along and he's very celebrated and we're jealous of what's happening to that person. We focus on the wrong thing instead of what God has done in our lives continuously. We'd never gone through things like that. God had protected us. But we compare it to the recognition that they may get. Now, we're called in Galatians 6:9 to not become weary of good doing. We're not working for God's, we are working for God's approval, not for man's. We got to make sure that we have our priorities right when we're serving. And thirdly, he may have had a little justifiable hesitation. So hear me out on this one. His younger brother had abandoned his family. His younger brother wasted his portion of the inheritance of their wealth on parties and prostitutes. And now this kid's coming back to be celebrated? You know, it's really hard to forgive someone and not remember the way they were, the person they were in the past, how they behaved, what they were. But when someone comes to know Christ, their sins are no longer counted against them, no matter how heinous. And we are the ones who are found lacking in the forgiveness area. This older brother, partly rightfully so, was a little upset at his younger brother for demanding his inheritance early or abandoning his family. But he didn't appreciate the fact that he had come back with a repentant heart, with a new spirit, asked for forgiveness, wanted to be part of the family again. And the older brother could not let go of the younger brother's past. It is very hard. It is so hard as a human to accept someone who has done us wrong. Now, this is a parable, but the final resolution between the father and his oldest son is not known. You know, in our lives, the ending is up to us as well. When these type of scenarios show itself in our families or in our own lives or our church, are we forgiving? Are we accepting? Or will we react like this older brother with anger and jealousy and selfishness? I want to be able to rejoice with those who have come to the first time or have returned back to God after being gone for a time. But it is much harder to do when someone has hurt you. But God forgave us when we rebelled against him, and we are called to that same love for our brethren. And today I want to encourage you to search for that forgiveness. Look in your hearts. If it's not there, ask God to give that to us. While this parable has so much application to our everyday life, we also want to look back and answer today's trivia question: to whom was Jesus speaking when this parable was first told? Well, that answer is in Luke 15, verses 1 through 2. It says, "Now the tax collectors and the sinners were all drawing near to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes." So Jesus was eating with tax collectors and sinners, but the Pharisees and scribes were the ones giving him a hard time, so he directed it towards, specifically, the Pharisees and scribes. while the tax collectors, sinners, and other disciples were in the presence. Well, that's been part 2 of the 3-part series for our Prodigal Son parable. Join me next Monday for part 3, where we'll talk about the Father. Looking forward to seeing you there on another Precision Point.
Thank you for listening today, and if you enjoyed what you heard, consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review. It will help us reach more people just like you who need to hear this message. Also remember that you can stay connected with us by downloading our mobile app. Just search for Second Avenue spelled out on the App Store or Google Play Store. Thank you again for listening, and God bless.